Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our Dina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to the Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses and my co-host John Sharan and our Dina Seward. How are you all doing today?
Doing great, doing good.
I've got my fingers crossed because on Wednesday I'm supposed to fly out to Phoenix, and that's the day that they're saying we're going to start with rain, and we might get as much as 3 to 5 inches of snow.
Oh, so. No, say it isn't so,
John. That does. So I'm hopeful to get out of Dodge.
Are you not here next Monday, then?
I will not be here next Monday.
Okay. You're going to miss Kevin Ryan, the All Blues Band.
Well, the sacrifices we have to make in life.
You know, I wrote a blues song once. My Rolls is in the shop, my Bentley's in the lake, and I just found out that my Picasso is a fake. I got the Rich Boy Blues. You never heard the Rich Boy Blues?
No, and I don't know. We want a second verse. Okay. No, let's get to our guest.
So today we have a religious leader. So the amount of ribaldry on the air today is going to be minimized.
I disagree. Religious leaders can be funny if they want to.
I said ribald.
Okay.
Ribald.
It's got a sexual edge.
Ribaldry.
Yes, we're not going to be doing that today.
Yes.
We have with us a rabbi of renown. He was a rabbi who helped resurrect a nearly dormant synagogue in Yonkers, Lincoln Park, which used to have a very large and active community because that part of Yonkers was traditionally very, very Jewish. And then in the 50s and 60s and the mid-70s, the Jews moved out.
Sort of like what happened with Brooklyn and the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Sort of what happened with the Grand Concourse Jews.
Yeah.
The Jews of the Bronx, they left too. But the congregation 16 years ago went out and hired a different kind of rabbi than they're used to.
He looks the same to me.
And so did my synagogue in Portchester. Alfredo Winter was another Hispanic rabbi who was brought in to change things up. Mm-hmm. And with us today we have Rabbi Rigoberto Vinas. I'm sorry.
Vinas.
Rabbi, please forgive me. Now, his story is sadder than the rabbi from Portchester, who basically, after being there 9 or 10 years, was kicked out because he had an accent. Now, they hired him with an accent. Rabbi Vinas doesn't have the accent. He's from Cuba. He's a Q Jew, right?
They call us Jubans.
Jubans.
That's all right, though. I like the Q Jew.
I got it backwards. But the rabbi, we're not going to talk to him too much in the first quarter hour, but briefly, you lost your job because you brought in...
I brought in people with accents.
New Jews with accents, but who also were non-white. Yeah. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've always found it disgusting when Jews practice racism. Now, because...
Well, I'd like to think that we all find it disgusting when anybody practices racism.
Yes, but you didn't lose 6 million people due to bigotry and racism, and we did.
It's not exactly like the Catholics were never persecuted.
I understand that, but I'm talking about we are a small group of people, and with what happened to us in the recent past, many years after, the Crusades and some of the other, and I know that there were lots of priests killed in concentration camps as well, not nearly the same amount as Jews. I mean, there's no denying that or arguing that, although you could argue it.
Why would I? Why would you say that? I wouldn't.
You're an argumentative person. But the fact
not
is,
on that, Peter.
But the fact is that we who survived are supposed to be, one of the things they've referred to us in the past is a compassionate people.
But Peter, the line tends to blur between tribalism and racism in some ways, where I don't think that people who are allegedly protecting their own group see it as racism, but
doesn't matter. It is. It's absolute
that's my whole
racism.
point.
You go to Israel. Go to Israel. Israel was founded by Eastern Europe, by European Jews.
Ashkenazim.
Yeah, but we don't need to identify. That's true. They're called Ashkenazi Jews. And
referring to the modern state of Israel.
And the modern state of Israel. Right. But the Jews who were living there before the state was founded were Middle Eastern Jews, known as Sephardim, which are Spanish Jews. So Jews who had been in the Middle East. And they were prejudiced against in Israel from the very outset. Then you have the Ethiopian Jews. And the Ethiopian Jews still barely have footing in the country of Israel. And their religion is Jewish as my grandfather's synagogue in Germany was.
But Israel is the reflection of the larger societies.
I know, but it's
throughout the
wrong.
world. It's wrong.
But we were supposed to have learned something. The world also was supposed to have learned. But when it happens within your own community, and you see racism from a group that complains all the time about being bigoted against, and people hating us simply on the basis of what our religion is, for us to practice the same thing with other people is nothing short of vile and disgusting, in my opinion. I have very strong opinions on this issue.
Clearly.
You know, and I'm not going to change that. We have with us today, we're going to go to a break. The rabbi's going to actually speak after my pontification in the first quarter hour. We have with us Rabbi Rigoberto Vinas, who was booted out of his job in a synagogue in Yonkers because he brought in brown and black Jews, many of whom have accents. We will. What is this show called, John? And what radio station we on?
I think this show is called Westchester Eye on the Radio, your weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Duran, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and we'll be back with more topical conversation right after this.
And now with Fox News commentary.
1-800-370-3510.
VOX. There's always something happening at 1460 on your radio.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I am Ardina Seward with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our guest today is Rabbi Rigoberto Vinas, who is Vinas.
With the tilde over the end.
It's
pronounced
with the tilde
Vinas.
over the end. Vinas.
Right. It means vineyard.
Vineyard. And
what it means?
I just want to throw out our call-in number, 914-636-0110, if you want to call and ask the rabbi some questions about what's going on in his life. So we were talking during the break, Rabbi, about the number of people that you brought to the congregation. So how many people came in?
Well, the issues were. Let me just give you a little background.
Right,
I work primarily. I have worked for a very long time in Spanish. I'm a Cuban Jew, as Peter was saying. They call us Cubans, and I have done extensive outreach in the Hispanic community because my first language is Spanish. I have an internet site. I have a Facebook site, of course, and
Why don't you share with
channel.
our audience what those are?
It's my Facebook is Página Oficial Rabino Vinas, my official page, and then on YouTube we do classes in Spanish on Judaism and Jewish life from a Sephardic perspective, and it is called Torah Tropical, Tropical Torah.
So that is your user.
That is our
name
username, on the
YouTube.
channel.
Sure.
We have over 1 million downloads of those videos.
Mm-hmm.
There's about 350 classes on everything that has to do with Sephardic history, Jewish life, everything in Spanish. So I've done a tremendous amount of outreach within the community in Spanish, specifically with an interest in attracting and helping people of crypto-Jewish background. A very large number of Latinos claim descent of Jews that were forcibly converted during the Inquisition and came to the Americas seeking refuge. They mixed with other peoples in the New World, and they're now claiming there's a resurgence of identity around that. So the idea would be, at Lincoln Park, was to expand the definition of who is Jewish, include as many people as possible, including people of Latino background, and also African-American Jews. Our work has been extensive within the African American Jewish community, and most people don't really understand that in the United States today, there's about 250,000 people of African American Jewish ancestry that claim an affiliation as a primary identity as Jews.
So then the follow-up question is, that being the case, why were they rejected?
There are a number of issues that come to the front, and we're about to, in order to answer that, we have to touch what I would call the third rail of Jewish politics. And the third rail of Jewish politics is not the Palestinian question, in my opinion. The third rail of Jewish politics is the issue of the Ashkenazi versus Sephardic divide. About 75% of the Jewish world is Ashkenazic. About 70 to 75%, especially in the United States.
Yes.
I'd say another 15% are Sephardic, and then there are Mizrahi and the Yemenites and the Ethiopian communities, which are none of the above. They don't really fall within that. But because of the...
How about the Greek, the Thessalonians?
Right, that's also not part of the Sephardic
that's
community.
That's why I brought that up.
Exactly. So, but what has happened is that because of the politics in the Jewish world, they've lumped everybody who isn't Ashkenazic into the Sephardic label. So I guess it's kind of like the one-drop rule. As soon as you have some sort of connection to the Sephardic community, you automatically are, or you're not Ashkenazic, you're automatically characterized as Sephardic. But it isn't really that simple. There are many, many different communities.
And a lot of people don't know, but there was a black civil rights movement in Israel in the 70s.
Yes.
Where you had the Sephardic who felt that they were discriminated against by the Ashkenazi, and they had their own political movement modeled after the black movement in the United States.
There have been many different movements of that type, and also there are Sephardic political parties as well. And now we start
the Shas party, right?
Yeah, and then the third rail gets even more hotter with even more electricity, but. It's identity issues, and at first I thought about it as an issue of education, that perhaps people who didn't really understand that background would best be moved to accept a larger community through education. But as I had more and more experience, I learned that that wasn't the case. It wasn't a lack of education; it was a lack of willingness to accept people of color in the community.
Do you feel that they were rejected because of their, shall we say, lack of Jewish cultural understanding, or were they rejected solely based on race and ethnic identity?
Certainly the second one. Most of the people that were coming to the synagogue and that I have had interaction with are very well versed in their community and in their culture. The issue is that how do they describe their Jewishness is very different than the way that Ashkenazi Jews would describe their Jewishness. So, are you Jewish because you eat bagels and lox and gefilte fish and herring, or
Ashkenazi foods?
Thank you. You identified them correctly. Or is your Jewishness coming from a different source? How do you express your Jewishness? Right. There are a lot of jokes about funny you don't look Jewish. So there seems to be an expectation. I mean, for example, my name is Rigoberto Vinas. Nobody who sees that name automatically thinks of that as a Jewish name, even though, ironically, Sephardic Jews have used the name.
They're the original Jews.
We've used that name and our last names for 1,000 years. In Spain, we had coats of arms. So anybody who saw that name
and arms of coats made by the Ashkenazi.
I can't beat that. Oh. Somebody's got to tailor this, right?
Right.
Yeah, you understand the idea here. So I think there was a culture clash. I was trying to create what I could describe as a vessel that would hold everybody together. And it was very difficult.
And it leaked.
Well,
Yeah, it had a lot of cracks.
And hold your point. We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break, which is coming up in a few seconds.
Yes,
So
a few
stay
seconds.
with us, folks.
So this is
Phone number is
Oh, go ahead.
914-636-0110 if you want to call to comment and speak with Rabbi Rigoberto Vinas.
On WVOX and WVOX.com, this is Westchester Eye on the Radio. We'll be right back.
WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Sharan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and our special in-studio guest this week is Rabbi Rigoberto Vinas. And Rabbi Vinas was telling us a little bit about the different branches of Judaism. And
Let's talk more about his experience in Yonkers.
Well, that's where we were going to go, in that because there's the Ashkenazi sect, and there seems to be everybody else. How did that relate to your situation in Yonkers?
Well, what happened was that the synagogue was originally an Ashkenazic congregation that was traditional conservative, not conservative politically, but conservative affiliated in terms of denomination. They were a 1950s example of that, really, in that they had separate seating for certain services and mixed seating at other services, but they had no mechitza, the traditional separating furniture that creates a barrier, right? That creates the separation between men and women. So many times people who were Orthodox didn't want to go there, and also conservatives who wanted to sit together didn't want to go there either. So it was neither here nor there. The idea was to create some sort of an approach that would attract people to the congregation. But it was an Ashkenazic, primarily Eastern European community, and they had built that community. The idea was then to see if we could branch out and expand that. They decided to become a modern Orthodox congregation so that it would be a liberal Orthodox congregation, thereby accommodating the people who were traditionally conservative, but also a little bit more traditional in terms of the Orthodox observance. The idea then, of course, when I came, I wanted to make it a congregation that would be a mixed congregation that would welcome people and show that it was a replicable model.
And also that it was reflective of the community in which it exists.
Exactly the thought. Quite a number of Hispanic Jews and African American Jews in the Bronx were looking for a place to be able to call home. We would attract the traditional American Jews of Ashkenazic background that wanted that mixed ethnicity, the dynamic experience of multiculturalism, and that was the idea. Unfortunately, rumors were spread quickly throughout the congregation that I really had some sort of secret plan to turn the congregation into a Sephardic congregation. I dealt with it.
You and your secret plans.
Yes, it's secret plans, yes. Dastardly, very secretly, yes. So the idea was, what I did was I tried to have it reflected in my contract that that I would serve as a rabbi of an Ashkenazic modern Orthodox congregation, and that the rituals of prayer would not be altered to Sephardic, but that they would be Ashkenazic.
Now, how big was the congregation? Was it a healthy size? Or
Well, it was a dying congregation 14 years ago when I came, and it still, unfortunately, hasn't been able to grow because many of the people that were attracted simply walked through and couldn't stay because of all of the tension. There's a tremendous amount of political tension. The joke in the rabbinate is that there's no business like shul business. So unfortunately, what's happened is that the politics turned many people away. And, one of the things that people
How many families are left?
there's about 60 family unit members.
And how many do you think there were at the height of this synagogue's popularity?
They claimed that there was 700.
700 families?
That's what they claimed.
Wow.
Well, that was a very big Jewish community over
Right.
there in southern Yonkers.
Well, the sanctuary sat 250, and then they expanded out into the social hall. So in its heyday, it was quite a powerful congregation.
Yeah.
So we started attracting people. Now the issue of membership also came up in that the bylaws of most congregations require that people be officially or legally, halachically, Jewish law recognized as Jewish. And many of the people who were coming were of crypto-Jewish background and could not, didn't have paperwork to prove that they were Jewish. So we were going through the process of performing what, according to Jewish law, is called return rituals. And it was a type of conversion that recognizes the ancestry of that person. So it was a way of reestablishing them. But all of the shul politics and all of that infighting and the discomfort drew a lot of people away.
So, in other words, these people were interrogated in a hostile way.
Tremendously. It was assumed that they were some sort of imposter, that they had to somehow prove that they were genuinely Jewish. And I kept saying, look, what would they come here if it wasn't that they felt drawn to that? We're not giving away money here. They're coming to participate in a religious service.
One that they're trying to get closer to.
Right.
Exactly.
And instead they're being pushed away. And then you had to pay with your job.
Yes. The synagogue politics got worse and worse as there was more and more economic difficulties in the congregation.
Because they were pushing people away instead of embracing them to come in.
Exactly. And the way to, I felt that the way to expand the popularity of the congregation was to announce to the world that we were a welcoming, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multiracial congregation. And I had tremendous pushback on that. So basically the only thing that they wanted to advertise themselves as was a local synagogue.
So they'd rather die than thrive.
I actually had a member say that to me, that they would rather close their doors than have it become what it was becoming.
I don't even know what to say to that, except that it's very short-sighted. I belong to a group of Jews called Reconstructionists, and for 10 years they've been fighting over what to call their rabbinic school. 10 years over this nonsense.
Yeah.
Is the word God going to be in it? Is the word Jews going to be in it? I don't really understand. I don't understand the internecine politics of different congregations or of different groups, and I'm just curious. In the years since you've left, what's going on over there? From what you know,
I've been told that attendance is down. There were quite a number of board members that left the board because of these troubles and really supported my work and didn't agree to this. So there were about 3 or 4 who basically left the board itself. Attendance at services is very low.
Did they have a minyan?
And
means 10 Jews?
I think they struggle for a minyan now. We were having on Saturday morning 60 to 70. On a good Shabbat, we had 80. And
that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But now, unfortunately, they struggle for a minyan.
So to get large numbers at my synagogue, they provide lunch.
Yeah. Right, Kiddush is always Kiddush is always good.
Get them food; they'll come listen to an hour and a half of the 3.5 hour service. That's the other problem with Jewish Sabbath services. You go to church on Sunday, 45 minutes. You're in, you're out, you're done. You go to
It's an hour deal, just like a television show.
Yeah, but you go to a synagogue on a Saturday, unless you're in an Orthodox synagogue where it's not that long. But in traditional American synagogues, it's like 3.5 hours of torture. And that's what it is. It's torturous, unless you're totally into it. And if you're totally into it, you should be going to an Orthodox synagogue where you're in and out in an hour.
You've never been to a Pentecostal church.
That's probably
that's 2 hours of torture.
Okay, but this is 3.5 hours of torture. Anyway, we're going to get back to this, to the torture that Rabbi Vinas has unfortunately experienced and endured in his 15 years or 14 years at the synagogue in Yonkers, which is right across the street, by the way, from the Raceway. We'll be right back.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to the final quarter hour here of Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Sharan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and in studio today we have Rabbi Rigoberto Vinas, and he's telling us about the struggles that he's had with his congregation in Yonkers. His former congregation in Yonkers, and that leads us to the next question. Rabbi, what are you doing these days? What's going on? And you mentioned that quite a few people have shown some support for you, and basically no longer participate with your old congregation. What's going on with them and with you?
Well, unfortunately, a number of people who attended that congregation have been left very much in limbo, looking for places to connect. Much of my work, as I mentioned earlier, has been classes over the internet. So I have a virtual congregation over the internet and use a lot of the new technology in order to be able to communicate. We have branches all over Latin America, and that get together to study together. And I just want to say that some of this is not only what happened in Yonkers is really an example, but unfortunately, many of the people of crypto-Jewish background that are returning to Judaism come across this problem all over Latin America and have not been able to come into their local synagogues. So much of my work has been an outreach in support and encouragement to these communities of a legitimate rabbi who says to them, no, we know that your ancestry is right. We know that your intentions are holy and pure. We know that God wants you to be part of our holy family. We know that people are trying to stop you from being recognized as who you are, and we want you to come home. And so much of that has been a ministry that comes through the internet.
Now, you mentioned the internet. This is a good segue that we can do here. Why don't you give our listeners an opportunity to find out where they can find you on the internet? You mentioned YouTube, you mentioned Facebook. Give all the opportunities that somebody can do to follow you on the internet.
On Facebook, we have over 14,000 friends or likes. It is my page called Rabino Vinas, Página Oficial. Rabino, R-A-B-I-N-O. That's the Spanish version of rabbi. Vinas, V-I-N-A-S. Página, P-A-G-I-N-A. Oficial. I think that's one F.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Página Oficial. We broadcast on Sundays at 11 o'clock a weekly Torah portion in Spanish that is viewed on a weekly basis by 5,000 people.
That's tremendous.
With a platform of questions and answers, people in 14 different countries. We also published a paper newspaper, that was funded by UJA Federation called Torah Tropical. We called it Tropical Torah in that it's warm, it's inviting, and it represents the tropics. It is a welcoming kind of experience, and it was primarily in Spanish. That was funded by UJA Federation. We then modified into more doing it on the internet. And on YouTube, we have a channel that is called Torah Tropical. And we publish there classes and events and holiday celebrations, historical classes, historical lectures, all primarily in Spanish, but there are some in English as well.
Have you at all thought to get a job at the UJA? I mean, they're a mostly Ashkenazi organization.
Well, today UJA Federation has become very multicultural and has been very supportive. Yeah, very supportive of all of the movements that would add to the inclusion. So we have had some support from them. Frankly, I'm really interested in what I was trying to do in Yonkers was not to create a Hispanic congregation or to create a black congregation or to create an Ashkenazic congregation. My interest was in creating a multicultural congregation, one that reflected what Jews look like. The reality of the fact is that the majority of Jews do not affiliate with any specific denomination. And I think one of those reasons is because the congregations aren't offering them anything that represents their present situation.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to do was to create a congregation that reflected the multicultural and the diversity of the Jewish experience. One that would have somebody praying in Yiddish right next to somebody who would be praying in Ladino.
And it also reflects the community.
It reflects the community. That's what I wanted. I also, if I closed my eyes, I would have a dream that people who simply want to explore, people who just want to see, how is it that the Jews pray? How are they connected to the larger world? I think it's a religious experience. You know, I don't think that God has one exclusive club. I think that God invites all of us, and He's the Father of all of mankind and loves us all. So I wanted to.
He used to play center field, though.
In war number 24. Number 24.
And he worked in Washington Heights.
Yeah.
Yeah, his name was Willie Mays.
Yeah.
Still is Willie Mays. He'll be 87 May 6th. Anyway, go ahead, Rabbi.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying here. I think there is a call for it. I think that most Jews who don't go to their traditional synagogue, it's because it's business as usual, and I think
it's boring.
And it's boring.
And it doesn't connect to the celebrants. It's not celebrated, but it doesn't connect to the community. One of the problems with Judaism in the United States is that people are more Jewish by their computers than they are in their synagogues. I can't stand going to synagogue, and I belong to a Reconstructionist shul where it's a very community-oriented place, but there are very few dark faces there. There are a few Sephardic Jews, and the Ashkenazi try to play to that, like, oh, we have, and it's the same thing as when you went to public school in Mamaroneck, Ardina. When there was a question for African Americans, they would just think you represented your entire race.
Oh, yes. There and Rhinebeck High School, too, because we were...
You went to Rhinebeck High School?
Went to Rhinebeck High School. We were 6 out of 500.
Were they the Panthers?
Yes, they were.
The Panthers, yep.
Yeah.
We were 6 out of 500, and we as the 6 had to represent the entire African-American population of the country.
Right? Well, growing up in Portchester...
Nothing like pressure, Artie.
Nothing like
yeah,
pressure.
but the rabbi is, he's trying to break... You're trying to break down these and they are artificial barriers.
They're artificial, and my argument is that they're not even a Jewish concept. Jews never thought of race as the color of your skin or what you look, your facial features. Jews thought of race as language, religion, culture. And so in the original Jewish way of thinking, pre all the silliness, we'll use that term, of all the terribleness that happened in Europe.
For hundreds and thousands of years.
For way too long. The Jews would be racially the same. I would be racially more related to Ethiopian Jews.
Actually, absolutely you
because
would.
From a Jewish concept, that is our race. You follow me? So what I would like to do is to promote a religion of inclusion, a religion of one God. And I think that when Abraham founded this monotheism, that he was saying that the one God was the same God of all
Mel
of mankind.
Brooks said that the William Morris agency created God.
That's
right. They were really, big entertainment firm. Now, once again, can you please give us information if people want to reach out to you, Rabbi?
So we publish under Torah Tropical. Our
Torah Tropical. Right. For those who don't can't hear through the accents.
Exactly.
Torah Tropical, but it doesn't have an H. In Spanish, it's
T-O-R-A.
Yes.
Right.
Ah.
T-O-R-A, yeah.
All right, so we're going to have to end it there. By the way, it's
TorahTropical.com.
The rabbi was talking about Ladino. Ladino is 1492 Spanish, because when the Jews were kicked out of Spain and out of Portugal, they took their language with them, and so it's unevolved Spanish, just like Yiddish is 17th century German. That's unevolved, and Ladino is even more of a dying language than Yiddish is. Yiddish is having a rebirth. Ladino, maybe for places like Sicily, maybe Ladino will have
People
a rebirth.
like me
And
are
also,
pushing it.
Spain and Portugal are accepting anyone who claims to have Portuguese or Spanish blood. They're welcoming you back as a citizen. So the world of Judaism is changing, whether people like it or not. Ardina, next week.
Next week we're going to have the All About the Blues band with Kevin Ryan, a former environmental lawyer.
1460 WVOX and WVIP HD2, New Rochelle, a Whitney Global Media Station.